All right, on sections 9.5, we're going to be talking about credit cards and amortization and mortgage loans and things like that. So, what we have here is first discussions about credit cards. So credit cards have a minimum monthly payment, but they don't have a fixed term to pay off the balance. So, the minimum amount, usually if you just pay that minimum amount, you could end up paying off your credit cards for a long period of time. So usually you want to try and pay more than the minimum. So on this first example here, we have that you charged a trip for $1,652 on your credit card. How long will it take to pay off the card, assuming you make a monthly payment of $100? So what we did is we wanted to look at the scenario with a 10.9% rate, 14.9% rate, and a 18.9% rate. And we're going to use a spreadsheet and we're going to calculate the number of periods in PER. So our formula is going to look like this. And then to figure out how much interest we actually pay, we're going to take the number of periods and multiply by 100, because number of periods represents how many monthly payments I have to make. If my monthly payments are $100, I'm going to multiply those two together and then subtract the $1,652, which is technically what I borrowed, and I'll figure out how much interest I paid. And then we're going to take the scenario, what if I increase my payments by $10, so I make $110 payments, and then the scenario, what if I decrease my payments and make them only $90? How would that affect my interest? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this spreadsheet that we've created. And what I have here, the $1,652 is how much you borrowed, and I have my three scenarios, 10.9%, 14.9%, and 18.9%. The payments, oops, I forgot to change it back, was $100 for each of them. So you'll look at the first one with a $100 payment at 10.9%. It's going to take me 17.9, basically 18 months to pay off the debt. And my interest is going to be $146 in interest. So if you look at the formula, the NPER, I'm taking the B2, which is the amount of interest, divided by 12 because it's monthly payments. The second part is the B3, which is my payment, which is $100, and the third part is what I borrowed, which is the $1,652, or how much is on the credit card. So that tells me how many periods it's going to take me to pay off the loan. And then the interest, notice what I did is I took the NPER, the 17.9, and I multiplied it by the B3, which is the monthly payment, and I subtracted the B1, which is the $1,652. So under the first scenario, if I made $100 payments with those interest rates, it would take me 18 months to pay this one off, basically 19 months to pay this one off, and 19 months to pay this one off. And my interest for this one would be $146. The interest for this would be $208, and the interest for this would be $276. So now, what if I decided to increase my payments to $110? Oops. So this is what's nice about, again, a spreadsheet, is I can just make this one change. And now what's happened is my payments went from basically 18 payments to 16 payments, from 19 payments to 17 payments, and 17 payments here. So basically it decreased my payments by 2 payments. My interest went from $146 to $132, and went from $208 to $187, and $276 to $247. Let's say that again, the third scenario was, what if I made $90 payments instead? So now it took me 20 months here, 21 months here, 22 months here, and $163 instead of $146, $234 instead of $208, and $313 instead of $116. So a lot of times, you know, they give you these monthly payments and they'll say your monthly payment's $50. So that means it would take me almost 40 months to pay off that debt. So what if I wanted to pay the debt off in 1 year? I wanted to be able to pay it off in 1 year. How many payments, or what would my payment have to be? Well, we already looked at 110. And with 110, we're looking at 16 months. So if I did 120, whoops, not 12, 120. Okay, I'm getting closer. So now it would take me 15 months. So what if I did 130? Not quite there. And I could try 140. And I've pretty much got it paid off in 1 year. So you can do things like this to figure out, like, if you wanted to borrow some money for a vacation or something like that, how could you pay it off so that you have enough money for the next year? Okay. All right, so let's look at the next example. So on our paper, the next one that we had was creating an amortization chart. So whenever you borrow money, for example, a mortgage or a car loan or something like that, the way it works is you make monthly payments, but not all of the money that you make for the payment goes towards the monthly payment, goes towards the amount that you borrowed. Some of it will pay interest and some of it will pay principal. So the principal is how much you borrowed, and it will decrease the value that you borrowed, and then you'll end up with an ending balance. So let's say I have a 30-year fixed mortgage for $150,000, and my rate on my fixed mortgage is 4.3%. So we're going to look at an amortization schedule for that. So we're going back to that spreadsheet again, and so here I have my $150,000, 4.3%. My monthly payment, I use the PMT formula to calculate my monthly payment. My monthly payment is going to be $742.31. So notice the first month, the interest, I'm calculating the interest by taking the $150,000 and multiplying it by 4.3% and dividing that by 12 because it's a monthly payment. The principal is calculated by taking the payment that I made and the interest from that payment and finding the difference. Now remember that the red and the parentheses mean that it is a negative value. So this formula is actually addition instead of subtraction. So the amount of interest that was paid was $537, and the amount of principal that was paid was $204, and that left my balance on my loan at $149,000. So as you notice, as you scroll through this, you'll notice that the balances here change. So now here on month 245, my interest is only $252 and my principal payment is $490. So more money is going to pay off the loan the farther along you get in the loan. And then here you have an example where it's $80 for the interest and $662 for the loan. And then the last month, most of the money is going towards the loan and very little of it's going to interest. So if you were to pay the loan off early, the bank would actually probably pay you money back. And they have to actually do a calculation and they'll figure out how much of a refund you're owed for this account. So this is an amortization chart. This is what it looks like. Okay. So now on the next example that we have on our worksheet, okay, so we're on example number 5. It says you got a mortgage for $100,000 and it has closing costs of $1,000 for 30 years fixed at 5%. What's the monthly payment and the annual percentage rate? So first of all, let's talk about what this fixed 5% means and the annual percentage rate. So the fixed rate is the amount that's only used to calculate the monthly payment. So it doesn't really take into consideration like closing cost. It doesn't take into consideration any other broker fees or anything like that. The annual percentage rate is the rate that you actually are paying per year, and it includes other fees such as the broker fees, interest fees, points, things like that. And it's almost always higher than the fixed rate. So sometimes you'll see a company advertising, like the example that we just did, it gave us the annual percentage rate. It didn't give us the fixed rate. So it depends on the problem. Sometimes they give you the fixed rate, sometimes they give you the annual percentage rate, and you just have to keep that in mind when you're looking at the loans. And a lot of times on bank calculators you can see both of these values. So again, we're going to calculate the payment. This is our formula for the payment, and we're going to calculate our rate. So this is our formula for the rate. So notice on the rate that I'm not using the entire 100,000. I'm taking out that closing cost. So when I put in this last value for the rate, which is supposed to be how much I borrowed, it's not the 100,000 I'm putting in there. It's 100,000 minus the closing cost. And remember, since we're dealing with monthly payments, so we're going to be multiplying our rate by 12, and we have to divide our percentage by 12. So these are the numbers that we get. 536 is going to be our payment, and 5.088 is our percent. So if we go to the spreadsheet again and we look at our spreadsheet, oops, here's our mortgage calculator. So $100,000, closing costs are $1,000, 30-year mortgage, 5%. So my payment formula is the B4, which is the percent, divide by 12. And then B3, which is the years, times 12, and then the negative B1. That's how we calculated the payment. So we use this fixed rate to calculate the payment. Then to find the annual percentage rate, I'm using actually the rate formula, and that calculates the annual percentage rate. And we're using, again, the 30 years times 12. We're using the monthly payment that we got here, the 536, and then we're taking B1 minus B2, so we're taking the amount that we borrowed minus the closing cost for that last value, and then we're multiplying it all by 12. So then the next question says, which is going to give us a better rate? The 5% with the $1,000 closing cost, which is this scenario, or the 100,000 with the 4.5% and a $4,000 closing cost. So it seems like it'd probably be pretty clear, and it is. So our monthly payment came out to be $536 for the 5%. We already did that one, with an annual percentage rate of 5.09. With the 100,000 and the $4,000 closing cost, you'll notice there's not a whole lot of difference in the monthly payment, but our annual percentage rate is actually 4.85% instead of 4.5%. So it just shows you the difference in what you're actually getting there. So what if I change this to $4,000? Okay. Now my annual percentage rate there goes up to 5.36%. My monthly payment didn't change, notice that, but my annual percentage rate went up for this value. So these are things that you can keep in mind and play around with and explore as you're going through this. You have to decide whether it's worth paying the higher closing cost, or, you know, if I go down again to the let's go back up to the $1,000 closing cost. If you look at the closing cost of the $1,000, there's not that much difference between the fixed rate and the annual percentage rate. So keep all those things in mind as you're making decisions like this. All right, hope it helps.